Talia, what is it about free will that so many people think it's a big question?
Well, free will matters because it's what we base what we think is morally right or morally wrong on in many ways. I, of course, believe that free will, at least the way we think about it, is somewhat of an illusion, and therefore we shouldn't be as moralistic as we are, because the way I think about free will makes the idea of someone deserving blame for doing a bad thing not make a whole lot of sense.
Well, that's very powerful in terms of how society operates. So you're making a radically new claim on social structure, are you not?
Yes, in terms of whether or not I believe free will to be an illusion.
And the consequences thereof.
Yes, and the consequences thereof. But I think the consequences come directly out of believing that free will, at least in the way that most people conceptualize free will, is an illusion.
Okay, so the importance of free will, you're saying, is it will affect our sense of moral judgments and therefore how society operates.
That's right.
And how can we dig deeper on that? Because that's radically different than the current perceptions.
What do you mean by the current perceptions?
Well, the current understanding of free will is drives our moral judgments, drives our judicial system. But you're saying that it's basically founded on something that is inherently, if not totally untrue, at least misguided.
I'm not saying that if someone does something bad that we shouldn't react to that, we shouldn't take them out of society, we shouldn't in some way make sure that doesn't happen again. What I'm saying is that I think that if you see free will in the way I and some other neuroscientists see free will, you take the moralistic sense out of it. You stop talking about people deserving blame and just react to the consequences of their actions and deal with it at that level. I'm not sure that it changes all that much about our legal system in terms of when people do something bad, there should be a consequence. But the idea of deserving of punishment, of blaming, those sorts of ideas, or even that whether somebody did something intentionally, these sorts of ideas should be taken out of the system, because given the way I think about free will, and a lot of neuroscientists do, these words don't make a whole lot of sense.
What you're saying is, for the utilitarian benefit of society, we need to do things to protect society, but shouldn't have a retributive punishment of the individual. Yes. Because it may not be something that you blame the individual for, in the same sense that if you believed of a robust free will.
Exactly. If the punishment is in place to, yes, make them feel bad or something, that doesn't make a lot of sense. If the punishment is a deterrent for somebody else, that actually still does make sense, in the sense that we do want people to do less bad things, and whatever we need to do to make that happen. But in terms of this person deserves to suffer because they did this bad thing, in terms of neural activity, the neural activity that created that made that person do that bad thing, I think the idea of deserving blame just it shouldn't exist in our legal system.
So you use a concept of neural activity causing somebody to do that thing. So a lot of little pieces there. You have neural activity, you have something that you called somebody, and then you had a thing. Now, the thing I know, and the neural activity I know, what's that somebody in between?
There isn't. You got me. There isn't. Everything is realized in neural activity. Our self, our concept of self, it's all realized in neural activity. So yes, that.
So in essence, what you're saying is that your approach to free will is taking that somebody and throwing it away. And
yes.
Basically just drawing a direct line from that neural activity as if there were no somebody directly to the act.
That's right. That's right. The somebody I'm referring to is when we become aware of what we're about to do. Because that's what we see, what our conscious experience is that, of becoming aware of potentially something our brain was about to do anyway. But of course, we only have access to what's in our conscious experience, so we see the moment where we become aware and then what we do, and we chunk that as the beginning and the end. But of course, that misses a lot of the story. It's like looking at the world potentially through a pipe or something and saying, oh, I see, a little bit of a building and a tree, that's all the world is. But of course, there's this big world. The same goes with neural activity in the brain. Most of the neural activity that's going on in the brain, we're completely unaware of, right? I'm unaware of how my brain is regulating my temperature, how my brain is making me continue to sit upright in my chair, what the words are that I'm choosing to speak. I'm just sort of conscious of the fact that we're having a conversation, right? But there's a lot more going on. It's sort of the idea of we see the tip of the iceberg, we don't see all the stuff that's going underneath. And so because we only have access to that little chunk, then we code that as being everything there is when that's not the case.
You targeted moral responsibility and social judgment as a reason why free will is a big question. Are there other reasons why that free will is a big question? Especially because you believe free will is something of an illusion, because that
Right.
reflects more broadly just than the social settings.
Yes. Well, I think the idea that we are conscious agents deciding what to do, consciously initiating courses of action, this is so compelling and so what it means to feel like a real agentic human being that the idea that it could be otherwise is incredibly threatening. And nobody wants to believe that it's all just wet matter in our heads that is creating action. We want to believe that we have a self that is doing the deciding. And so, and I think for good reason we have that sort of conscious experience that it makes us feel like we're in control of the world, and not feeling in control is a very, very bad place to be.
But you're saying that very, very bad place to be is what is real.
Yes. But it's not necessarily healthy to necessarily believe it, but...
Reality is not very healthy.
Well, if we really had the experience of what I think is going on, of our brains creating everything, and that potentially we just become aware right before things happen, if we really were aware of the machinery, it would be unsettling. Because I think feeling like we are deciding things and doing things and in control is keeps us sane in a way.